And welcome back. We are preparing ourselves to venture off into our first segment of the morning. Very important one, as you know, Cuba was struck as well by Hurricane Irma. There's not so much we know about it for the time being, but we've got, of course, somebody here who to talk to us about it. Actually, we've got Orestes Hernandez, Minister Councilor at the Embassy of Cuba. We want to wish you all the very best. Bienvenido y buenos días.
Thank you very much for having me again here. Thank you for the invitation.
Definitely, like we mentioned, it's very nice to have you in. We've heard a lot about Cuba and the relationship we've got, the country Belize have got with your country of Cuba. There's so much to talk about. There's so much we have known about the country. But Hurricane Irma did a low on your country, and we've got a lot of Belizean students over there as well. Talk to us about what took place there, and of course the damages sustained by Hurricane Irma.
Okay, as you have heard, Irma has been maybe the most powerful hurricane that has been passed by the Atlantic, at least in the last 20 years. I have to say that there in Cuba we have a very long experience dealing with hurricanes. Yeah. So as we are just sitting in the place where we are, so most of those hurricanes come and then pass. Sometimes they pass by the south, by the north, but most of them pass by us. So this one has been very, very peculiar because it passed just from the eastern side of northeastern side of Cuba, Baracoa city, to the north. I mean, all the way down to the north side. So it swept most of the 90% of our country. And due to the immense diameter, I mean the dimension, it covered most of our provinces from the north and to the south. Yeah. And it took 72 hours on our territory. Oh, wow. So it's something that maybe people just saw from the TV news or from the webcast, and they said, yes, it's something happening. But that you have heard, I mean, Irma almost swept most of the eastern Caribbean islands. Yeah. So when you saw all of those images before he got into Cuba, then you could see that. Yeah. So imagine a country like Cuba. Yes, I mean, this is part of the North Malecon wall, which is in Havana. We have never had that before, actually. Yeah. Wow. It took like 500 meters from the coast to the city. It was just in Havana, but when you see all of those pictures in different provinces, yeah, it's been a very important damages. Most of the damages have been, the impact has been on housing, as you see there, electrical framework, and also in our tourist industry. So the north side of Cuba is the most important part of our tourist industry. So the damages have been very, very hard. Yeah. See, housing has been one of those that has been affected the most. Mm-hmm. So for sure, Irma has been an important and a very hard hurricane, yeah, that has been affecting us. See those cars down there.
Let's talk about the areas or the cities that have been worse affected.
Cuba has 14 provinces, and I have to say that at least 12 of them have been affected in different levels. Yes. So the north side of Cuba, which are around 8 provinces, have been the more affected one. Yeah. But also in the south have been affected. Small towns, I mean big cities, but most small towns, housing, as I told you before, and electrical power. Most of our electrical framework is under the earth. I mean, it's over the ground. So it's been effective. Actually, we have been involved in a very important process of reconstruction because we were hit by another hurricane like 2 years ago. So it means that we were in the middle of recovery from one, and then we had another one. So, but at least 12 provinces in Cuba has been affected, yeah, either completely or partial, but it's being affected by the hurricane.
Yeah. Now, what is the current recovery efforts in place? These people don't have homes. Some of them sustain massive flood damage. What is the government of Cuba doing right now to be able to provide shelter and all the necessary needs for the families?
I have to say that due to that experience that we have had with a hurricane for a long time, we have what we call a nationwide civil defense framework and structure that worked even before that. So due to that, you have heard that we only have 10 casualties. 10 Cubans dead during the whole process. Unfortunately, only one. It's a pity. It's something that would happen, but just
a house had collapsed.
Yes, in 2 of them, the house has collapsed. There were 5 or 6 of them that they were doing something that were not allowed to do at that moment. So something that might be avoided. But anyhow, there were 10 of them. There were 10 of them, and it was terrible for us. But more than 1 million people, almost 2 million people, were evacuated in less than 3 hours in the whole system. So it means that it is an important framework that involves not only the authorities, but also the neighborhoods, also the civil institutions and so on. So you have to understand, and in Cuba we have that kind of organization to do so. So after, even before Irma left the country, we started all of the process. Yesterday we were checking with Ambassador a new consideration of the government institution saying that we will focus especially in housing recovery, because there were many people that lost at least something in their homes. So we have an important framework of shelters that they can go there. We're going to take there, which is not that far from their place they live, and then they will be provided with foods, and they will be provided with stuff like anything just to make their regular life. And I have to say that most of our institutions are focused on that. So this is the priority in Cuba nowadays. It doesn't matter if there is another event or not, but as our president has said, that will be the priority. Not only housing, but also the electrical power, because you know how important electrical power is. Part of that, let's say, organizational framework, just to avoid any kind of casualty, is to bring the foreign students that are in Cuba. I know that we have received in the embassy a lot of calls, a lot of emails, people asking for their relatives in Cuba. And I have to say that the information that we receive at the embassy is that all the students, part of our people, the Belizean students, and also students from different countries, were evacuated on time. Actually, if you check the website, or if you check the internet, so you can see pictures from the different group of students, Belizean students, that were sending to their parents here, and they were at different strong structures, like schools or something. They were with part of the Cuban people just evacuated, and that. So as I said, even before Irma left the country, we started with the recovery process. The first thing, just to involve the public opinion, just the neighborhoods and something, in try to recover what Irma left behind it. And also, we started just with the whole framework of streets and housing. And since the news that we have received in the last hours, at least the 90% of the electrical framework has been recovered yet. So it means that that thing is in place, and people has been, you see, those are neighborhoods in Old Havana. So people in themselves, they began to work. So I think that the most important element that we have to take into account is that this is a nationwide effort. It's not an effort from authorities or either for the population, but it's a nationwide effort that we are all involved in that.
That's a very powerful picture to show people getting up, and we know Cubans are very resilient, getting up and doing their part in cleaning up and trying to recover and pick up the pieces. What is the estimate for the number of families that have been displaced?
We haven't received that figure yet. Actually, yesterday the President Raúl Castro is leading the whole effort, and yesterday he said that the quantification of the loss on the people that have been affected is not yet. But I think that in the next couple of hours we will have that figure. We are very active. We have been trying to be very active with our Facebook page, and we have been putting all the information down there from what we received from Havana, even from the message that we received from different individuals in Cuba. But I think that in the next hours, then we will have that, and then we can give that to the public opinion.
Two of the most important sectors in a country is normally, of course, agriculture
Yes.
and tourism. You mentioned that tourism has been hard hit by Irma. Talk to us about the
Yeah.
agricultural sector for
Okay.
the fact that this is how we get food.
Yes, of course. I mean, thank you for reminding me that. Yes, agriculture was the other sector that was very affected. So mostly of that north side, especially in the central Cuba and in eastern Cuba, as agriculture as their most important activity. So when you see those pictures, and I mean, pictures speak from themselves.
Yeah.
So I mean, thousands of tons of different crops has been affected. This is something that will take years in some of them. But we have received at the same time, even though we are doing our own effort to recover from that as soon as we can, we have received a lot of expressions and a lot of attitude of help from different countries and governments. I remember that I was just trying to reach my family or to talk to them when I got the news that the Venezuelan, the Bolivarian Venezuelan government has just made the first one that they said we want to help. In which sense we can help on that? We received some help from them as soon as the hurricane passed. So then we thank the Venezuelan government because always they are just with us in every time. But in more than 10 countries, 10 countries, not only in Latin America and Caribbean, but in Europe, has just expressed their decision, the government, to help us, especially in foods, especially in something that we cannot take in few hours, something that we need to help, that we need to receive that help. So, but for sure, I mean, absolutely, agriculture has been one of the most affected sectors in Cuba.
Yeah. Now, you spoke a bit earlier about the structures that are in place to evacuate people in good time. What do you think from the people in Cuba allows them to be so cooperative? In many countries, when there is a mandatory evacuation, when there's a threat of a storm, they take it lightly. It was so important that you were able to evacuate people in time. What has been the response from the people who have moved away from the coast and essentially spared their life?
Yes, you're right. Yes, I mean, as I told you at the beginning, first of all, there is an important experience dealing with hurricanes.
Yeah.
So if you do that kind of event every year, a couple of times, and you realize that when the government and the authorities say, let's do that, it is because they know, because there are a lot of professionals working on that, they know that you will be in danger. I mean, your life will be in danger.
Yeah.
Secondly, is that there is not possible to have that kind of process, huge process, millions of people involved, if there is not a trust in what they receive from their government.
Yeah.
Not only in the way we receive information, but in the way we receive treatment. So you will be safe. And third is because we have an important framework of schools and other institutions that we can use as shelters. And in the last but not the least is because people, they help each other even they are not family. Maybe I am not the right person to talk about that because I am coming from Cuba, but when you go to Cuba, then you can see that you don't need to be a relative to receive help from others.
Yeah.
In Cuba we say that the closest relative you have is your neighbor.
Wow.
So it means that if you cannot stay at your home, you can stay at mine.
Yeah.
So it's a whole bunch of circumstances that made that possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are very proud to have that because when you see 1.5 million population can be evacuated to different places. I mean, from the governmental shelters to neighbors and relatives in less than 3 hours.
Wow.
It's something that sounds yes, but the reality is that one. You were right. I mean, sometimes you help from different places that even that when the government said that there is mandatory evacuation, then you see, I mean, dozens of guys, I mean, just walking around the streets with the water down there, with, I mean, exposed to different dangers. But in Cuba, it's a general consensus that you need to face that with that kind of discipline,
Yeah.
just to avoid, I mean, more difficulties and casualties.
Yeah. So the priority right now is to ensure that people have shelter and their necessities.
Yes, the vital necessity is just. If you allow me, let me just press, because since the beginning we have received at the embassy dozens of calls and emails and different messages from the top authorities of Belize to the different political parties, to the leader of the opposition, but mainly for the citizens themselves, expressing their solidarity with Cuba. So we are very proud to have that kind of treatment from the Belizean public opinion, because as you said at the beginning, there is an important experience in the relationship between our two countries. So we express our gratitude publicly to the Belizean authorities and to the Belizean people because of that. We feel very, I have to say, very impressive because of that. So thank you again for all Belizeans to express that solidarity.
Okay. And if there are Belizeans who want to help, who want to assist in some way, can they reach out to the embassy?
Okay, I know that there are a lot of Belizeans and Cuban residents actually try to help the people in Cuba. As I said at the beginning, we need to build a framework to do so, because we cannot do that because it will be a mess. Everything. It is expensive to send like a plane or like a container to do so. We have asked our authorities in Havana, which will be the best option for those that are interested in donating something to us. And I think that in the next hours we will have that information to the public opinion, which is the best way to do it.
Yeah. So you'll be updating on Facebook as to how people can
We
help.
will be updating on Facebook. We'll be updating our email addresses, but then we will be keeping on that informed.
Okay. Well, Orestes, we're so grateful for you to stop in and provide an update. As you pointed out, there were 10 Cubans who lost their life in Hurricane Irma, but with the massive evacuation that took place, or had the massive evacuation not taken place, it could have been a lot worse.
Yes, you're
and
right.
so, of course, we also want to extend our sympathy to the Cuban families who lost loved ones, and of course some of their homes as well and are displaced. So do keep us updated, and thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having us, Andrea.
All right. We're going to go ahead now and take a break, and when we come back, we'll be talking about the launch of the Belize International Film Festival, so stay tuned.